Was the great flood of Noah's time a divine judgment on the wicked world, or was it just a major natural disaster? This is an important question that has been debated for centuries. Some believe that it was God's way of cleansing the earth of sin, while others think it was simply a result of an act of God. So which is it? In today's episode, we are going to explore the biblical account of the flood and the scientific evidence that may shed light on this mystery. We will also discuss the different interpretations of the flood story and what it means for us today. The story of the flood is told in the book of Genesis, chapters 6 through 9. It tells the story of how God was grieved by the wickedness of humanity and decided to send a flood to wipe out all life on earth, but he warned Noah, a righteous man, about the impending judgment and instructed him to build an ark to save himself, his family, and two of every kind of animal. After 40 days and 40 nights of rain, the floodwaters receded and the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Then, after 7 more days, Noah sent out a dove to see if the water had receded, and it returned with an olive leaf. As a sign of hope, Noah waited another 7 days before leaving the ark with his family and animals, and they bowed down and worshipped God, and Noah built an altar and offered burnt offerings, which God accepted. The story of the flood is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. It is a story of judgment, but it is also a story of hope. God saw that the world was corrupt and sinful, and he sent a flood to cleanse the earth of evil. But he also made a covenant with Noah and the other animals that he would never again destroy the world by flood. The story teaches us that God is just and merciful, that he hates sin, but he also loves people and wants them to turn from their wicked ways and follow him. But there are some who doubt that such an event ever took place. Some say that the story of the flood is just a myth or a legend, while others say that it is an allegory or a symbol of something else. These people point to the fact that the Bible is not clear on whether the flood covered the entire earth or just a part of it, and they also say that the Bible does not explain how the rain lasted for 40 days and 40 nights without the earth being completely destroyed. Those who believe that the flood was a divine judgment often cite the fact that the Bible says that God was grieved by the wickedness of humanity. They also point to the fact that the Bible says that the flood was sent to punish the wicked and to cleanse the earth of sin. Those who believe that the flood was a natural disaster often cite the fact that the Bible does not say anything about God being upset or grieved by the wickedness of humanity. They also point to the fact that the Bible says that the flood was sent because the earth was corrupt and that it was filled with violence. So what do you think? Was the flood a divine judgment or a natural disaster? Let me know in the comments below. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. The idea that the flood was a divine judgment is supported by the fact that the Bible says that God was grieved by the wickedness of humanity. In Genesis 6-5, it says that God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it says in Genesis 6-7 that the Lord regretted that he had made humankind. However, the idea that the flood was a natural disaster is supported by the fact that the Bible says that the flood was sent because the earth was corrupt and that it was filled with violence. In Genesis 7-3, it says that God said to Noah, "I have indeed determined to make an end of all mankind, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Behold, I am bringing a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh in which there is the breath of life, all of them along with everything that is on the earth." Now, the thing is that both of these views have some merit to them. On the one hand, it does seem like the Bible is saying that God was grieved by the wickedness of humanity. On the other hand, it also seems like the Bible is saying that the flood was sent because the earth was corrupt and filled with violence. So how do we reconcile these two views? Well, I think that the answer lies in the fact that the flood was both a divine judgment and a natural disaster. In other words, God did send the flood, but it was not just a punishment for the wickedness of humanity. It was also a natural disaster that resulted from the corruption and violence of the earth. Think about it this way. If the earth is corrupt and filled with violence, then it is not surprising that there would be extreme weather events, and what could be more extreme than a flood? A flood would obviously result in the death of many people and animals, and it would also destroy the plants and crops that humans relied on for food. In other words, a flood would have devastating consequences for human society. This view is supported by the fact that the Bible says that the floodwaters were so powerful that they covered the highest mountains. In Genesis 7:19, it says that the rain continued to fall on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and it also says that all the high mountains, hills, and valleys were filled with water. This suggests that the flood was a massive natural disaster that affected the entire earth. Now, of course, the Bible also says that God sent the flood. So this raises the question, if the flood was a natural disaster, then why did God send it? Well, I believe that God sent the flood because he was grieved by the wickedness of humanity, but he did not send it merely as a punishment. He also sent it as a means of cleansing the earth of its corruption and violence. This view is supported by the fact that the Bible says that God made a covenant with Noah that he would never again destroy the world by flood. In Genesis 9:11, it says that God said, I have set my rainbow in the clouds. It shall be that when the rainbow is in the clouds, I will look upon the earth and remember the everlasting covenant between God and the earth. This suggests that the flood was not just a random event, but it was a deliberate act of God to cleanse the earth. Now, some may object and say that if the flood was a natural disaster, then why did God bother making a covenant with Noah? Well, I believe that the answer lies in the fact that God made the covenant with Noah, not just for Noah's sake, but for the sake of all humanity. You see, the flood did not just wipe out all the animals and plants, but it also wiped out all the human cultures and civilizations. It was a complete reset of the world as God knew it. And this was done not just because God was upset with humanity, but because God wanted to give humanity a fresh start. This is why God made the covenant with Noah. God was saying to Noah and to all of humanity, I will never again destroy the earth by flood, because I know that the wickedness of man is great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart is only evil continually. But I will remember my covenant that I have made with day and night. It will not depart from offspring to offspring. As regards the waters which are under the heavens, never again shall there be a flood to destroy all flesh, as at the first. So what does this mean for us today? Well, I believe that it means that we should never doubt that God is in control of the world, even when things seem to be spinning out of control. The flood of Noah's time was a terrible tragedy, but it was also an act of God that ultimately led to the salvation of humanity. In the same way, God is in control of the world today, and even when things seem dark and hopeless, we can trust that God has a plan and that He will never abandon us. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and share it with a friend. Thank you for watching.